The clock is ticking down to Good Friday. You're planning to go to church, look at the cross, maybe say a prayer, and walk out thinking your soul is safe. Stop right there. Padre Pio used to physically remove people from his confessional, not politely. He would look a person in the eyes, and he could see their soul. And if the repentance was hollow, if the confession was a performance, he would send them away. Cold, no absolution. Because he knew something most Catholics today have completely forgotten. The sins you commit in secret are the exact same weapons that tortured Christ 2,000 years ago. This isn't poetry. This isn't metaphor. This is Catholic doctrine, confirmed by mystics, by exorcists, by saints who witnessed it in visions so real they wept blood. Every unconfessed sin you carry into Good Friday is a nail, a whip, a thorn. And if you walk through those church doors carrying any of the 12 sins I'm about to name, you are not just watching the crucifixion from a safe distance. You are actively participating in it. Listen to this list carefully. If even one of these sins pierces your conscience, that pressure you feel right now is the Holy Spirit. Don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it. Run to a priest before Good Friday begins. If you recognize yourself in what you're about to hear, write in the comments right now, "Lord, forgive my sins, I am ready for the cross." By writing that, you are not just leaving a comment, you are making the first act of contrition. You are telling heaven out loud that you refuse to carry those nails one more day. Now listen, sin number 1, the kiss of Judas, deceit. Picture the garden, dark, torches cutting through the olive trees, and a man walks straight toward Jesus with a smile on his face. A man who had eaten at the same table, who had prayed at the same feet, who knew exactly who he was betraying, and he kissed him. That's the sin, not the money, the smile, the intimacy turned into a weapon. You know this sin if you've sat across from a business partner, shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and you were already planning to cheat him. You know this sin if you go home to your family every night, say, "I love you," and you're hiding a secret that would destroy them. The betrayal isn't the act. The betrayal is the warmth you use to cover it. Every time you smile and deceive, you are walking through that garden with a torch. Sin number 2, the sleep in the garden, distraction. Christ knelt in the dirt that night. His sweat was falling like drops of blood. The weight of every human sin was pressing down on him so hard that an angel had to come from heaven just to keep him from collapsing, and his closest friends were asleep. Not evil, not plotting against him, just absent, checked out, comfortable in the dark. He came back 3 times. 3 times he found them sleeping. Could you not watch with me 1 hour? That question is still hanging in the air. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you gave Christ 1 full hour of prayer? Not a rushed Hail Mary in the car, not a distracted rosary while your mind ran through tomorrow's schedule. 1 real hour, present, awake. You've given 3 hours to your phone today, scrolling, watching, consuming content that evaporates the moment you close the app. He is still in that garden. He is still asking the question, and most Catholics are still asleep. Sin number 3, the denial of Peter, workplace cowardice. Peter loved Christ. Nobody doubts that. He had walked on water. He had drawn a sword in the garden and cut off a soldier's ear. He was ready to die. Until a servant girl looked at him by the fire and said, "You were with him, weren't you?" And Peter's courage evaporated 3 times, 3 denials. And then the rooster crowed. And Peter remembered what Christ had told him. And he went out and wept bitterly. That scene is playing out every single day in your office, in your school, on your social media. Someone mentions they're Catholic and the room goes cold. Someone mocks the church and everyone laughs, and you laugh along. Someone asks if you believe in the church's teaching on marriage or life or sin, and you get suddenly very interested in your shoes. You're not afraid of a servant girl. You're afraid of being cancelled, of losing followers, of being called intolerant. But the rooster is going to crow, and you are going to remember this moment. Peter wept, and Christ forgave him, but only because Peter ran back. Are you running back, or are you still standing by the fire, pretending you don't know him? Sin number 4, choosing Barabbas. Toxic culture. Pilate stood before the crowd and gave them a choice. On one side, Jesus, innocent, healing the sick, raising the dead, speaking words no human being had ever spoken. On the other side, Barabbas, a criminal, a murderer, a man whose whole life was destruction. The crowd knew the difference. They chose Barabbas anyway. Don't be too quick to judge that crowd, because you face that exact same choice every single night when you sit down and decide what you're going to let into your mind. You know what is holy. You know what the gospel sounds like. You know the difference between content that builds your soul and content that slowly hollows it out. Gossip channels, reality shows built on humiliation, influencers whose entire platform is vanity, lust, and rage dressed up as entertainment. And night after night, you choose Barabbas. Every hour you give to content that degrades the human soul is an hour you ripped out of Christ's hands and handed to a criminal. You knew the difference. That's what makes it a choice. Barabbas didn't storm the stage. The crowd handed him the microphone. Don't hand him yours. Sin number 5, Pilate's Basin, moral cowardice. Pilate knew. That's the part nobody talks about. He knew Christ was innocent. His own wife had sent him a message, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man. I suffered much in a dream because of him." He looked Jesus in the face and said, "I find no guilt in this man." And then he called for a basin of water, and he washed his hands of it. "It's not my responsibility. I can't get involved. Who am I to interfere?" You've said those words. Maybe not out loud, but you've thought them. Your teenager is consuming things online that are destroying his mind, and you tell yourself he needs his privacy. Your friend is walking straight into a disaster of a relationship, and you say, "It's her life. Who am I to judge?" Your co-worker is heading toward a cliff, and you hand him a map with a smile because you don't want the awkwardness of speaking the truth. You are standing at that basin right now. Washing your hands doesn't make them clean. Pilate's hands were never dirtier than the moment he put them in that water. The souls around you are not abstract. They have names. You know those names. And silence, dressed up as respect, is just cowardice with good manners. Sin number 6. The Pillar of Scourging, the secret screen. This one is going to cost some of you the comfort of your denial, so stay with me. Padre Pio said it plainly. He didn't soften it for a modern audience. He said that sins of the flesh, particularly the hidden ones, the ones committed alone in the dark, are the literal whips tearing the flesh off Christ's back at the pillar. Not a metaphor for mild discomfort. Strips of skin, bone exposed. A man barely recognizable as human by the time they stopped. That's what pornography does in the spiritual realm. Every single time, the Roman soldiers at the pillar weren't thinking about theology. They were just doing what felt powerful in the moment. They didn't see what they were destroying. They just saw what they wanted to take. That is exactly the psychology of the sin. The moment, the darkness, the screen, the instant that follows, and then the silence after. Padre Pio could read souls. He could see this sin on a person before they said a word. He would not grant absolution until the penitent showed real, concrete intention to stop. Not good feelings, not vague hopes. A plan, a real weapon against the temptation. If this is your sin, the confessional is waiting, not to condemn you, to pull you away from the pillar. Sin number 7, the crown of thorns, intellectual pride. They didn't just beat him, they mocked him. They took a branch of thorns and pressed it into his skull, not because it was efficient, not because it served a military purpose, but because they wanted to humiliate the idea of his kingship. They put a reed in his hand like a scepter. They bowed before him with sarcasm dripping from their lips. "Hail, King of the Jews!" And then they hit the crown deeper into his head with that same reed. The weapon of this sin is the intellect used as a throne. You know this sin if you've sat in a pew and thought, "I'm too educated for this homily." If you've picked and chosen which church teachings you'll accept based on what feels reasonable to your modern sensibility. If you've told yourself that 2,000 years of saints, martyrs, theologians, and doctors of the church simply hadn't considered your particular objection yet. That is, the crown being pressed in. The faith isn't asking you to stop thinking. It's asking you to kneel before a truth that is bigger than your reasoning. There is a difference between a question asked in humility and a verdict delivered in pride. Pride doesn't announce itself. It arrives wearing the language of nuance, and it presses the thorns in deeper every time you decide that you know better than the church Christ built with his own blood. Sin number 8, the weight of the cross, the victim mindset. He carried it through the streets of Jerusalem. His back was already destroyed. His knees were hitting the stone pavement. The wood was splintered and rough, and it tore into wounds that had no business being touched again. He fell 3 times, and he got up 3 times. Now think about the last time you complained about your life. Really think about it. The traffic that made you rage, the job that doesn't pay enough, the family that doesn't appreciate you, the prayer that God hasn't answered yet the way you wanted. None of that is nothing. Suffering is real. But there is a difference between carrying your cross and performing it. The victim mindset doesn't carry the cross. It drags it behind like evidence in a case against God. Look what I have to deal with. Look how unfair this is. Nobody understands what I carry. Christ didn't perform his suffering. He didn't narrate it. He didn't stop at every corner to make sure the crowd appreciated the weight. He moved forward. Your daily inconveniences are real crosses, small ones maybe, but they are invitations to unite your suffering to his, to grow in patience, to become someone the people around you can actually lean on. Whining is not carrying the cross. Whining is dropping it and kicking it down the road. Pick it up, move forward. Sin number 9, stripping the garments, character assassination. Before they nailed him to the wood, they stripped him, in public, in front of his mother, every wound exposed, every indignity visible. The crowd watched, some laughed. This is one of the quietest sins on this list, and one of the most common. Your group chat, your lunch table, the text thread where someone's name comes up and suddenly everyone has something to say. The story you tell about a coworker that has just enough truth in it to sound credible, but is shaped just carefully enough to destroy how people see them. You don't need a crowd and a hill. You need a phone and a few contacts. Character assassination rarely looks like cruelty from the inside. It looks like honesty. It sounds like concern. I'm just saying what everyone is already thinking. Someone had to say it. I'm not being mean. I'm being real. But you know the moment, that specific moment, when the conversation shifted from truth to exposure, when it stopped being about the problem and started being about the person, when the point became stripping them down so the group could see how flawed they are. That is the moment you handed the soldier the garment. Strip no one, not even the people who deserve it, especially not the people who deserve it. Sin number 10, the iron nails, domestic rage. They didn't use rope. Rope would have been enough to hold a man to a cross. They used nails, iron spikes driven through flesh and bone with a hammer, because the point wasn't just to hold him there. The point was to make sure he felt every second of it. Now think about your home. Think about the last time your voice rose inside those walls. The last time you said something to your spouse that you knew would cut. The last time your children flinched at the sound of your footsteps coming down the hallway because they knew what mood you were in. Explosive anger inside a home is not passion. It is not strength. It is not discipline. It is a hammer. Every time your tongue becomes a weapon against the people who have no choice but to love you, every time you use your size or your volume or your history with someone to make them feel small, you are driving something through a hand that never deserved it. The home is supposed to be the domestic church, the first place a child learns what God feels like, and if what God feels like in your home is unpredictable, volatile, and dangerous, that child will spend the rest of their life flinching at the word Father. This sin goes to confession, not next week, before Good Friday. Sin number 11, the bitter gall, the 10-year grudge. When Christ was thirsty on the cross, and the thirst of crucifixion is unlike anything a human body can experience, every cell screaming for water, someone offered him a sponge soaked in vinegar and gall, bitter, undrinkable, an insult dressed as mercy. He tasted it, and he refused it. You have someone in your life. Maybe it's been 5 years, maybe 10, maybe longer. They hurt you, really hurt you. And you have carried that wound so long it has become part of your identity. You bring it to every family dinner. You carry it into every conversation where their name comes up. You have rehearsed what they did so many times that the story is now sharper than the original injury. You are holding a sponge of vinegar. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Unforgiveness doesn't punish the person who hurt you. They may not think about it at all. They may have forgotten entirely. You are the one drinking the bitterness. You are the one whose soul is slowly being hollowed out by a grievance that Christ already paid for on that cross. Forgiveness is not saying what they did was acceptable. It is releasing your grip on the poison. He tasted it and refused it. You can refuse it too. Sin number 12. Lying to the priest in the confessional. This is the last sin on this list. And it is the worst. Not because it's the most dramatic, but because of what it reveals. Every other sin on this list happens in the world, in offices and group chats and bedrooms and living rooms. This one happens inside the sacrament itself, inside the very instrument Christ left us, so that none of the other sins would have to destroy us permanently. To walk into that confessional and deliberately withhold a sin, to choose your ego over your soul, to protect the image you have of yourself in front of a priest who has heard everything, is not just a sin, it is a sacrilege. Padre Pio wept over this. He said that a confession made with a deliberately hidden mortal sin is not just invalid, it adds a new mortal sin on top of the one you came in carrying. You walk out worse than you walked in, and you receive communion afterward thinking you are in a state of grace when you are not. That is not dramatic language. That is church teaching. If this is you, if there is something you have been avoiding saying out loud in that confessional for months or years, this is your moment. No priest has ever heard anything that shocked God. There is nothing in you that is beyond the reach of that sacrament, but you have to bring it all in, every single nail. There was a man named Carlo. He was a successful architect from northern Italy, well-dressed, well-spoken, respected in his parish. He went to Mass every Sunday. He sat in the same pew. He shook the same hands. And he carried, for 11 years, a sin he had never once confessed to any priest. Not because he didn't know it was a sin, he knew exactly what it was, but it was the kind of sin that, if spoken out loud, would shatter the image he had carefully constructed, the devoted husband, the upstanding Catholic, the man other men looked to for steadiness. So he kept it folded up, pressed flat, hidden under everything else he brought to confession. He heard about Padre Pio the way most people did, through someone else's story, half believed. A friend told him that Padre Pio could read consciences, that he sometimes refused absolution, that standing before him in that confessional was not like standing before other priests. Carlo almost didn't go. He made the trip to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1958. He stood in line for hours, and when he finally knelt in that dark wooden box and began his confession, reciting the familiar list, the manageable sins, the ones he had said 100 times before, Padre Pio stopped him, not with anger, not with a loud voice. He simply said quietly, "You have forgotten something." Carlo's hands went cold. His throat closed. He said later that in that moment he understood without any doubt that the man on the other side of that screen already knew, not suspected, knew. He said the sin out loud for the first time in 11 years. He described what happened next as the closest thing to physical relief he had ever experienced, like a hand reaching into his chest and removing something that had been pressing against his heart for over a decade. He wept so hard the wooden kneeler shook. Padre Pio gave him his penance, and then he said something Carlo never forgot. He said, "The sin you hid was not too big for God. It was too big for you. Now it belongs to him." Carlo went back to his hotel room, got on his knees, and did not move for 2 hours. He returned to his family a different man. His wife noticed it before he said a word. She told him later that when he walked through the door, something about his face had changed. Like a weight she hadn't realized he was carrying had finally been set down. That is what the confessional actually is. Not a courtroom, not a performance, not a ritual to be survived. It is the place where what is too heavy for you becomes his. But you have to bring the real weight in, not just the manageable pieces, the whole thing, all of it. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is the difference between a soul that survives Good Friday and one that doesn't. Confession cleans the wound. But a wound that is cleaned and left unprotected gets infected again. The enemy knows your patterns better than you do. He knows which sin you're most likely to pick back up on Saturday morning. He knows the exact thought that will appear in your mind on Easter Sunday to make you feel like the confession didn't really count. He knows how to whisper just loud enough to make you doubt everything you just received. You need a weapon that works every single day, not just in the confessional, not just on Good Friday. Every morning you wake up and the battle begins again. Padre Pio prayed 15 decades of the rosary every day, even when his hands were so torn by the stigmata that the beads had to be placed between his fingers by someone else. He called it his weapon, not his comfort, his weapon. Before I bring you to the final word of this video, I want to make sure that weapon is already in your hands. I've put together an ebook called The Power of the Rosary with Padre Pio, Miracles, Protection, and Divine Graces. It is not a devotional pamphlet, it is a spiritual warfare manual. Inside, you will find Padre Pio's own teachings on how to pray the rosary with real devotion, not as a routine, but as an assault on the darkness around your home and your family. You'll find documented testimonies of miracles, a complete 30-day guide to building the rosary as a daily habit that actually holds. Prayers for protection, for healing, for the people you love who are walking away from the faith. It is a small investment in your soul. And right now, it is the most important thing you can do after you close this video. The link is pinned in the first comment. Go there now, Download it before Good Friday arrives. And then, before you do anything else today, pray this with me. Lord Jesus Christ, I have heard your name on these 12 wounds. I recognized myself. I am not going to look away from that. I am coming to you in confession before this Good Friday, not because I have it together, not because I have earned the right to stand before you, but because you told me to come, because you said the door was open, because you bled to make sure I had somewhere to bring all of this. Take the nails from my hands, take the vinegar from my lips, take the grudges, the hidden screens, the cowardice, the pride, all of it. I don't want to participate in your crucifixion anymore. I want to stand at the foot of that cross and weep for the right reasons. Mary, Mother of Sorrows, intercede for me. Padre Pio, pray for me. Amen. Good Friday is coming, not as a date on a calendar, as a door. And on the other side of that door is either the most powerful moment of your spiritual year or another performance, another hour in a pew with a soul full of weight you were too proud to set down. That choice is yours, right now, today. Padre Pio once said that the saddest sight he ever witnessed was not a sinner. It was a sinner who already knew the way home and chose to stay lost. Don't be that person. There is a priest somewhere near you, maybe 10 minutes away, maybe 20, who has the authority given to him by Christ himself on the night of the resurrection to say 4 words that will change the condition of your soul completely. I absolve you. Go. That's it. That is the entire mechanism of 2,000 years of Catholic mercy. You walk in carrying the nails. You walk out empty-handed. The wound is real. The grace is realer. But you have to walk in. You have to open your mouth and say the thing you have been protecting for months or years. You have to trust that the mercy of God is larger than the worst thing you have ever done, because it is. Because he proved it on that cross, because he spread his arms as wide as they would go and let them drive the iron through anyway, specifically so that you would never have a reason to stay away. Go to confession before Good Friday, not after, not on Easter when the line is shorter, before. And when you kneel in that confessional, bring everything. Every sin on this list that you recognized, every weight you have been carrying quietly so nobody would see, every hidden thing that surfaces at 2 a.m. when the house is silent and you know deep down that something is wrong. Bring it all in, because Good Friday without a clean soul is just a sad story about a man who died 2,000 years ago. But Good Friday with a clean soul, that is the day you finally understand why he did it. For you, specifically, by name. Now go.